Now, as we move forward into the next step, networking 201 as I call it, how are you going to go about building connections? That's something that I get asked a question about over and over again. I reach out to someone, what's the best way? Once I've reached out to them, how do I follow up? So we're going to talk about that a little bit here. There's a few key things to creating a process that works. It really begins with a clear focus. It's very helpful when you can reach out to someone and have clarity in your messaging. Secondly, an important step is tracking. You want to make sure that you have a good database and you're able to keep track of those individuals that you talked out. The third thing is reaching out to your contacts and having very clear objectives for your conversation. And it's not just about, I want to talk to you to learn about your hiring process. So learning about their role, learning about their projects, those sorts of things. Fourth, you really want to be persistent. You're dealing with a group of individuals that's tremendously busy. They travel, they have a lot on their plate, and so following up becomes crucial. And then you also may have to be a little bit pushy in an appropriate way to make sure that you are getting closer and closer to the right type of opportunities. So asking questions, again, following up, and making sure that you own the process. And then lastly, you want to make sure that the networking that you're doing and the information that you're gaining, you integrate that into the various tools that you're using in your job search. This would be things like your resume, your LinkedIn profile, in a cover letter adding very specific information, and then in the interview preparation and conveying your messages. As you go about considering what you're going to be doing for networking, it's important to be planful and to anticipate some of the things that are ahead of you. Strategically defining how you're going to network, having a big picture view, and addressing some of these topics in advance. So one step is to inventory the different individuals who are in your network at various consulting firms. You also may find that there's some gaps. There could be a boutique firm that you're very interested in, but there isn't anyone from your university. So how do you find another contact at that organization? The next then is your objectives. Why are you reaching out? Sometimes in the emails that people receive, it's not clear what you're looking for. So be clear about that. And then what are the tools that you're going to use to stay organized? How are you going to reach out to people? Are you going to use email? Are you also potentially going to follow up with a phone call? Those sorts of things. And then what type of activities can you engage in? Certainly, meeting people and having a coffee is one way. There's often other events. There are conferences, there are activities at the various universities, there are alumni events, and there are often cases, many individuals that are speaking in classroom settings. There are ways to create networking opportunities without just reaching out to people and asking for a phone call. So think about those types of activities and try to be a little bit more strategic about how you might engage from a networking perspective. Secondly, I think it's also important to consider where you are in your stage of information gathering and then wrap your networking focus around that stage. I've really defined 3 different types of networking. First, I call it advisory networking. This is where you're very early, you're looking for advice, you're trying to get some validation of the aspects of your search, maybe the messaging that you're going to convey, and you're really reaching out to people and asking them for advice. These are very open-ended conversations. The second type of networking purpose is exploratory. Perhaps there's a firm that you have in mind that you really would like to gain more information about. It could be that the interview process is some time down the road. It could be 6, 9, 12 months away, and at this stage you're really just trying to learn as much as you possibly can and make it specific to a particular firm. The last type of networking then is informational. This is far more tailored. It's directed around a specific role, maybe a particular practice area within a firm, and there's also some aspect of that conversation where you are conveying your background and your interest, and you are very much trying to pursue an interview. So the informational conversation is a lot more targeted. Helpful to consider these purposes as you create and craft the type of outreach that you're going to be sending to a networking contact. You also have ideally prepared at the stage where you're beginning your networking some type of job search strategy. This may not be something exactly that you communicate to someone that you're reaching out to ask for a networking conversation, but there are elements that are useful to have as you articulate why you're reaching out and what information that you want, and potentially being prepared in that networking conversation to explain your background. So having the job search strategy somewhat developed can be very useful, and it can also help the person that you're going to be talking with see that you have done some of your homework, and again, that you possess some of the consulting skills that are really going to be evaluated. And then, of course, you need to reach out to contacts. Typically, we're doing this today via some type of an email. It's useful to keep the emails short. Please remember that many people in this day and age, they're reading emails on some type of a mobile phone. They may not actually be reading it on their computer. So having a nice short email that you don't have to scroll down several pages to finish reading can be useful. The contents of that email should be crisp, concise, and to the point. You give some type of an introduction. In many cases, you can say, I'm a student at whatever school, and I'm reaching out to you to talk about consulting as a career. Then you want to make a statement in your email about how you found this individual's contact. It could be that they were a referral. It could be that you found them in the alumni database. It could be that you saw them as a guest speaker in some type of a class. But be clear about that. Create that connection. Then, the third part of the email should state very clearly why you're contacting the individual. You want a networking conversation, you'd really like to get their advice, you'd like to gain some perspective about the firm and their work. State that as directly as you can. And then, if you can create some type of a hook that catches that person's attention, you could say something simple like, we went to the same undergraduate institution, or I understand from your presentation that you're doing work at this client. That's an industry background that I have. There's lots of different things that can be part of that hook, and you have to really be thoughtful about that and tailor it to the particular individual that you're going to be reaching out to. And then last, you do want to include some brief description of your background. You need to establish a level of credibility with the person that you're reaching out to. This should not be long. It could be a couple of sentences. And then also, by the way, you can refer that person to your LinkedIn profile by simply including that link in your email. The last thing then is that you want to plan for the connection that you're going to have. Assume that the person that you reach out to is going to respond and you're going to have the ability to have a conversation with them. It could be in person or it could be over the phone. Some of the elements of that planning should include the purpose that we've talked about, having an agenda, really doing a bit of background research and finding a connection with that individual. Find something that you can talk about as a little bit of chit chat before you get into the conversation. Also, you should plan on introducing yourself, and you should practice the 30-second overview of your background. Then confirm the logistics. Who is calling who? What phone number? What time? What time zone? If you're meeting in person, where will you meet? Never leave anything to chance. I don't know how many meetings that I've had with individuals, and we've said that we were going to meet at a Starbucks in a particular area. Well, come to find out, there's 3 different Starbucks that could be in that particular area. So having an exact address and maybe some description would be helpful. Again, be proactive. And then always arrive early. Be ready. Again, don't leave anything to chance.